Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our 30 on Thursday where we'll be talking about creating an employee directory in SharePoint. If this is your first time joining us, our 30 on Thursday webinar series is a bi-weekly 30-minute SharePoint webinar series where we talk all things Microsoft SharePoint. Our next webinar will be on November 13th, and we will be talking about identity management challenges when moving SharePoint to the cloud. Our full schedule of our webinars can be found on our website at sharepoint.protiviti.com/webinars. We have several upcoming online training courses. If you're interested in any of these topics, from administration and architecture to styling and branding, please check out our website, sharepoint.protiviti.com/training, to see all the courses that we have available. Our SharePointConference.org is right around the corner. On Monday, we will be in Dallas, Texas, and we will have pre- and post-conference workshops as well as 3 separate tracks for business users, technical users, and UX professionals. If you're interested in attending, we do have a few seats left. Please use the promo code 30T50 for attending today's webinar, and you'll get 50% off registration. You can learn more and register at sharepointconference.org/Dallas. So for today's session, it is being recorded. It'll be on our website, sharepoint.protiviti.com/archived webinars, along with all of the other webinars that we've done in the past. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please insert them in the question window in the GoToMeeting toolbar, and we will get to all the questions after Brittany's presentation today. Today's topic is creating an employee directory in SharePoint. Our presenter is Brittany Kwait, a solution architect here at Protiviti, and I am Julia Oates, and I will be moderating today's session. So let's get started. I'm going to make Brittany presenter.
Thanks, Julia. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, looks good.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Kwait, and I'm a solution architect and PMP here at Protiviti. Next Monday, as Julia mentioned, there is a conference in Dallas, and I will be presenting there on how to effectively build project management solutions on SharePoint. So if you like what you see today or you have any interest in that particular topic, I'd love to talk to you more about that. But now on with the show for the employee directory. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to create a directory style page in SharePoint. This is something I think is really lacking in SharePoint. A lot of people ask us for this, want to get a view of who's who in the organization. Often using Outlook isn't effective because you need to know who you're looking for initially. And so this leads you both to employee search, but also to employee discovery, so you can find out who is capable of what, skills, names, so on. You can think of an employee directory in SharePoint as almost a reverse search. So rather than entering terms and getting a result set back, we're going to start with the entire result set and then add sorts and filters to be able to locate the exact person or group of people that we're looking for. Overall, we're going to just do some good SharePointing. Hopefully you'll pick up some tips that maybe don't apply to you, or maybe this employee directory isn't specifically what you're looking for, but you might find something useful in another application within SharePoint. So all these skills can be reused over and over again once you get the hang of a few nuances. So what are those skills? Actually, before I go into that, let me talk a bit about what we're going to be viewing and some assumptions that are made in this environment. So I'll be coming back to this at the end of the presentation, but want to make sure that all of these things are in place before we go to set up an employee directory, or we're not going to get what we're looking for. So the user profile service, if you don't know what this is, it's what synchronizes your Active Directory with SharePoint so that everyone has an account. We know what your email address is, we know what your phone number is, all the information that we need in SharePoint to create an employee directory coming in from Active Directory. So just make sure that this is working or you won't get any results back at all. Secondly, we want to make sure that we're not bringing in accounts that aren't real people. Understand that you might get one or two of them, but often when we go to set up an employee directory, we do see these horrible names such as you see here because they're bringing in other types of group objects within Active Directory that do not contain employees, and they will show up in your search results. But if you have some other filters in place, you might be able to remove those if you do need them for some reason. What I'm going to show you today will require central admin access, or if you're on Office 365, just the administrative access. If you don't have that, what we're doing isn't particularly taxing. It's not going to be very time-consuming. I mean, I'm doing it in a 30-minute presentation here. So just bring some donuts over, and I'm sure that whoever is there will be very happy to help you out. I am going to be doing this presentation on an Office 365 site. However, everything that you see can certainly be done on-prem. It's actually a little bit easier. And everything that I'm going to show you can be done in 2010, but obviously some of the navigation and the wording might be a little bit different, but there's no reason that you couldn't do this in previous versions of SharePoint as well if you're not on 2013 just yet. I am going to be showing this on an Enterprise Search Center site collection. Again, if you don't have an Enterprise Search Center or you don't have any type of search center set up, that's okay. You will have to do a couple extra steps to set up the page correctly, but it's perfectly feasible that if you have all these other requirements, the user profile service, the AD containers, you'll be good to go there. But as you'll see when we come to the navigation, best to attach this to an Enterprise Search Center. Okay, so now we're going to go on with the demo. So here is my Enterprise Search Center. Not much to look at right here, but if you have site owner permissions, and you don't need site collection admin, but you will need site owner, the first thing we're going to do is create a page to serve our directory. We're going to go to the site contents list and to the pages. So all of the pages in our search center are located here, and we are going to create a new page, and we're just going to use the page content type. Not going to be too creative here. We're just going to call this employee directory. And the URL for this, instead of this long one, I'm going to replace that with just directory. And I have only one option here for my page layout, and that's the search results page. So just say create. And you can see it here. It's already checked out. But because I've created that, I can access it. So here we go. Not much to see. If you do find yourself with a different page than you see here, it's okay. When you come in to edit the page, one of the options that you'll have up here on the ribbon is page layout. So in this example, I have only search results available, but if you have a different type of page layout, you might have other options here. And just make sure that search results is selected if my screen looks different than yours. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about the web parts that are included on a search results page because we will be touching most of them in this configuration process. The first is the search box, and this is where users can enter in a term and receive results. But as I stated at the beginning, we're going to do an inverse search. So we're actually going to be using the search box to search within the returned results. So the search box is automatically linked to the search results on this page. And I don't need to do any additional customization there in order to get that to work. So that's pretty nice. The search navigation, you may or may not want to leave this web part here. It allows you to cycle through different result types, such as searching for everything, searching for conversations. My suggestion is if you're going with the employee directory, that you replace the people link with the employee directory. And time permitting at the end, I will show you how that is done, because that way you can search for a particular person, and it can bring you to that person on the people results page, or just show you everybody, and then you can filter from there. So it's dual purpose. And the most important part of the page are the search results. So in this case, it's where our directory is going to live, because the results are going to be everybody in our organization, at least initially. And finally, on the left part here, we have the refinement panel, and this will allow us to choose certain properties from Active Directory via the user profile service that we can filter the employees based on, such as title and department. Right, now on to configuring. So because this is a search result page and we haven't entered in any search results, we're not seeing anything on the page. Makes sense. Now we're going to set up this reverse search, and we're going to tell the search box to show us everything related to people. So I'm going to come into my web part, click Edit Web Part, and change query. If you have any experience at all with the content search web part in 2013, then this will be extremely familiar to you. In fact, it's basically identical to that, but some of the options are a little bit different. I'm going to leave the search box query into the query text because that will allow anything entered into that search box to further filter the results that are returned. Most importantly, I don't want to search local SharePoint results because this is an employee directory. I need to pull back people results. So I'm going to select that first. And only one other small change is needed here. I'm going to set the property content class contains manual value, or you can leave it as contains. I'm going to set it to equals, kind of the same thing in this case. And we're going to say that is SPS people. Add property filter. Now when I click test query, I can see everyone in the organization. It says there's 39. It's obviously not showing me everyone, but we get the idea that those are all of the people in this organization. I don't need to change any of the other settings here, but I do want to talk about a few. If you did want to show a certain subset of people always by default, going back to that container question, if you had certain contractors or you had other types of accounts that you needed to bring into SharePoint but you didn't want them to display in your directory, then you can use one of these refiners to say, by default, when you hit this page, only a subset of the results are going to be displayed. For the demo today, I am not going to add any additional refiners, but do be aware that that's an option if that's something that might be necessary for you. Another really interesting one is this sorting tab. It allows us to do some interesting things in how we view our directory. So if we think about an employee directory, it's usually alphabetical. I want to see alphabetical by last name or reverse alphabetical, Z to A, fine. But we can show people by popularity. We can show people by how frequently their profiles are viewed. If you are using the social features of SharePoint, I can even view my directory based on the social distance to me. So if I'm following certain people, those will appear at the top of my directory, and the people that are the furthest away in my chain will appear towards the end. And you can have multiple sorts, which I'll show you in a moment, but what we're defining here is the sort. So when I first land on the page, what am I going to view? So I'm just going to leave this one blank as well. That's all I need to do here. I'm going to select OK. And now I'm going to move on to the next piece, which is display templates. I am not going to make any changes here either, but I do want to let you know that this is an option for you if you decide that you want to customize this a little bit further. The display template allows you to change how the results look in your employee directory. So what we're going to see here is a very standard SharePoint search results item template where we're going to have a link and we're going to have a few details. It's not configured, customized at all. But it's quite simple to come in, if you're familiar with HTML, and create your own template, change the look, change the layout of these results so that you can show different properties, or that you could show it more in a tabular view if that was something that was interesting to you. But I'm not going to be changing these right now. Now for the settings. Now this is something that you will want to change. So for the settings, I have only 10 results per page, so that's going to take me a long time to go through my directory. So I'm just going to change this to 50 so that I can see more people at once. And I am going to go down to result control settings. I don't need an advanced link because I'm not doing any type of advanced searching here. I'll leave the result count. I'm going to remove the search drop-down, remove the preferences link, and so I only have, and enable this one. So I have 3 boxes checked: the result count, sort drop-down, and paging. Now the sort drop-down is where we can provide different sorting options to the user on how they might want to view this. So what I showed you before in the configure query is that users can determine how they want to sort the results when they first land on the page, but what I'm doing here is allowing people to change that later on. This is written in something called JSON. I don't understand JSON. I imagine most people on the phone don't understand it, but that's okay because if you look at it, you kind of get an understanding of how it's working. So I've conveniently copied this into a notepad for you. This is what's in here right now. So I'm seeing that there's 4 different sort options: relevance, date newest, date oldest, lifetime views, recent views. Most of those aren't really useful to me. As an employee directory, I don't have any dates. Lifetime views, maybe that's something that you're interested in. Recent views, maybe that's interested too. So what I've done is I've changed this a little bit here. I added first name A to Z and last name A to Z and Z to A. And I left the lifetime views and recent views in because, hey, why not? It doesn't cost me anything to leave them in there. Maybe people will use them. And I'm also leaving in this relevance, which is some SharePoint magic to determine how relevant something is to you, probably based on something of social distance and popularity. And I'm going to leave that in as my default, but you can certainly change this around. And all I did was copy the syntax because this said newest to oldest, so I figured it was going to be about the same. And it turns out I was right. That doesn't happen too often, so I got a lucky break here. And if you want something like this, just copy it out and into a notepad and write it out first. This way you'll save yourself a lot of time than trying to do it in that tiny little rectangle that they give you. So after I did that up here, I just created a really long string, removed all my new lines, and I'm just going to copy this and go back to my little rectangle and replace that with my new sorting options. And everything else here looks pretty good. I don't need to change anything on the appearance, layout, or advanced. So I will click OK. And as you can see here, I already have the start of an employee directory. Pretty quick. And I've got my sorting results, so I can sort on first name. So that seems to be working great. So that's the search result web part. Next, we're going to go up to the search box web part and make a couple of changes here. All of this section here is okay. I'm going to open the query suggestions section, and this is really neat. I'm going to say show people name suggestions. I know it's 2014, type ahead search might not be that neat, but for SharePoint it's pretty neat. You know, it can tend to lag behind a little bit, but we've got it here, so let's take advantage of it. Show people name suggestions. I'm going to say I want 8 suggestions, especially if you have more people in your organization, that will be helpful to you. So that all looks pretty good. Really nothing else that I need to do here. So again, I'm going to say, okay. So now I can start to type ahead. If I type G-A-R, you can see I've got 2 people who have names start with those letters. Also, if I do this combination, you can see it's also selecting by last name. So if I don't know exactly how to spell Bellu, then I can just start to type it there, and that will help me find who I'm looking for. Next, we're going to come to this refinement panel. And this will show us the options that we have. So you can see the default here is modified date. Not very useful at all for an employee directory, especially if everybody's coming over at the same time. So we're going to change that. I'm going to click Choose Refiners over here on the panel. And none of these are relevant at all. And unfortunately, I can't select them all and get rid of them, so I'm just going to have to do this. Okay, now I'm going to look through and try to find the ones that would actually be meaningful to me. So that would be department and job title, responsibilities, and one called people keywords. Now some of this doesn't make sense, or I might want to further refine how this appears. So I think department's pretty good. People understand what department means. I'm good with that. Job title. First of all, I don't like that there's not a space on here. So I'm going to come in here to display name, and I'm just going to call it title. People, when they're looking at a directory, will understand what that means. Responsibilities, I'm going to limit this to 7. I don't need 15 of those showing up. And people keywords, again, not really useful in understanding what it is. If I look at the sample values that are brought back, I can say I'm going to classify this as skills and hobbies, probably the least important of the refiners, so I'm going to leave that at the bottom. Although if you do have an organization where people are populating their skills in their My Site, then congratulations, first of all, and that can be really useful to help you find who you're looking for. If you're looking for somebody with a certain certification or skills in negotiation, let's say, then that would be helpful to you. And I'm going to limit that to 7. That's about it for my page. I touched all the web parts except for the navigation. I'm going to leave that one for now. Say OK there and save. Now, because I have publishing enabled, the page is still checked out. So I'm going to go back to edit the page. Otherwise, if I don't check it in, nobody else will see this. So I go to the Publish tab, and I'm just going to publish. I don't have any comments. And there we go. Now I have everyone in my organization. I have the refiners based on the information of these users. I have my template. So again, I'm just using the standard SharePoint result template. I'm able to see information about each of these users, and I can sort the results. Pretty good. Did that pretty quickly. The refiners, by the way, are sorted in order of quantity. So most of my results here are sales and marketing, followed by finance, followed by legal. If you do want them sorted alphabetically, you can do that as well. Just leaving the SharePoint default here. So let's take a look at one of my users. I can click on the name, and I am brought over to the user's My Site. And I see that the users here have a office code, and I'd love to be able to include that in my refiners, but it's missing. I didn't have that option when I was setting up my refiner. So how do I do that? So this is where it gets a little bit different between Office 365 and SharePoint on-premise, and this is where I need to go into my administrative panel. I should also let you know that if I choose to sort here by last name, it's not really working. It is letting me do that, but they're not going into alphabetical order. And in fact, I think I had configured this before, but if you try that on your own, you'll have to believe me, you're going to get an error. The whole page will kind of break down. So we don't want that. And we do want to sort by last name because that is pretty important after all. So I'm going to go here into my SharePoint admin. Again, this is a pretty simple change. If you do have access to SharePoint administration or central administration, then you can do this yourself, or you can just tell somebody what it is that you need done. We're going to do it here in a couple minutes. So once you're into your site, you're going to come to the search properties. And we're going to be looking at something called the search schema. Now, the site collection also has a search schema level, as does the site, but you can't make these kind of sweeping changes that you need to make here. So I'm going to look for that office property. And it's this one here, office number. That's the one that I saw on the user profile that I want to include. Now, unfortunately, in Office 365, it does not allow you to update the properties to be refinable. So as you can see here, the refine is blank. And I'm going to show you what my problem was with the last name, which I didn't reset prior to this. I apologize for that. You can see here is last name, and it's not sortable, which is really strange because first name is sortable. And if usually you might want to sort by last name than first name, but that's just how it is, and you can't change it if you're on Office 365. If you have it on-prem, just go in and change it around. But what I had to do here is map it to a what's called a refinable string, which I've misspelled numerous times. It's actually refinable if you're trying to help find that refinable, not refinable. And I've got last name and office that I've already mapped here earlier just to save time. And this is why it was actually working for me, because I had mapped it. But these refinable properties exist whether you're on-premise or in the cloud, and they're already set up to be crawled to a, mapped to a crawled property. So I'm going to show you, for example, Office. So this is refinable string 1. And I can't make any changes here in Office 365, but what's nice is that it's already set up to be queryable, retrievable, refinable, everything that I need it to be. All I have to do is map it to my right property. If you don't know what the property is, you can go into the user profile service and find it in the profile exactly what the value is and what it's called. So I've just simply added a mapping here. I said I want to map this to the people office field. And then OK. And you can do this for any other property that's not available to you by default. As you can see, a lot of them were, but you might have to go in and change if you, or again with the sort options. Last name, oddly, isn't available for sorting, so I had to map that one here also. So I'm going to go back now to my search, and I'm going to edit the page. And I know I'm almost out of time, but what I've done, what you can do at that point is edit the refiners, and I'm going to add in that refinable string, which is refinable string 001, this one. And what you will need to do, you can see it says no values found. That's to be expected. It will require a full crawl in order to map those properties. And at that time, once that crawl is run, which unfortunately in Office 365 I don't have any control over, so I'm not able to show that to you right now. But if you did have it on-prem, you can see the refiner over there after the full crawl is run, and it'll have all of your information. So real quickly, I'll just put these up here on the screen. We did about 8 steps in general, creating the page, adding some of the options for the different web parts, and getting the last step, which I didn't show you, is configuring the navigation to directory, which is just figuring out where you want to put that link. And you may or may not need to create different managed properties, but do be aware that that often becomes the situation because you can't sort by something or you can't filter by something that you really need in your directory. But it's not difficult to do once you know what it is that you are looking for. So I will hand it back to Julia now. And I'd love to hear your questions. I'd love to help out. So if you have a couple minutes to stick around, you can ask me. Or if you want to see more, I'd be happy to show you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. So if everyone could insert your questions, if you have them, into the question window in the GoToMeeting toolbar. We do have a couple of questions. The session will be posted on our website at sharepoint.protiviti.com/archived webinars. So you will be able to access the video there. We had 2 questions about that. And then the other question we had was, is responsibilities a default Active Directory field?
That's a good question. So when it comes to the user profile service, the properties come from 2 different places. Some of them come from Active Directory, like email address or phone number. Some of them come from the profile within the My Site. Those are the more social features. So your skills, your about me, like the paragraph that you might want to write about yourself, often your photo, come from SharePoint. And that is configured in the user profile service, but I've never seen where that comes from Active Directory because often that's something you want the user to update themselves. So that's a manage metadata field that's populated in the My Site by the user, but then gets synced into that user profile service and is available as a refiner.
Okay, great. We have some other questions coming in. Where do I add the new last name managed property for the sort?
There's 2 places that you need to add that in. I'll just go back here to the screen so I can show you. So first you need to add it to that JSON script so that it shows up as a result. So as you can see, I can click on it here. If you try that without making it sortable, you will get an error. Just trust me on that. So the first thing you need to do is add it here so that you get the error. The second thing is you need to, if you're on-prem, go into Central Admin, go to the search schema and set the last name property to be sortable. It's simply a checkbox, and then run a full crawl. If you're on Office 365, you have to go and map the last name property to one of the refinable properties. There's 99 of them. Actually, there's 100 because it's 0 to 99 for you, and then wait patiently, perhaps for a day, perhaps longer, unfortunately, and wait for the crawl to work for you, and then your last name sort will work.
Great. Does this require that all of your users set up their MySite data?
Absolutely not. But what might happen is if you don't change your template, you can see I've got these links. And if I were to click on someone's name and they didn't have their MySite set up, I would just get the profile and I wouldn't get the MySite page. So if that's the situation in your organization, you might want to remove the link or to make an effort to have everyone set up their MySite. But if you don't have MySites and you just have your profile, that's fine too. It will link to that by default.
Okay. Your directory pulls pictures, which is what we want to do. Where do we put those? In Active Directory, or can I do this as an admin?
Oh, that's one of those it depends questions. It's really up to how you want to handle that in your own organization. What we often see is users will upload it themselves into SharePoint, and that's one of the few properties that will do a reverse sync back into AD so that you can use it in Exchange and Link or any other areas or software where you want to pull pictures in from the user. It starts with SharePoint, goes into AD. As an administrator, you can upload photos on someone's behalf. It's tedious, but you can do that, and you would do that in SharePoint. You could also set up AD to include a thumbnail photo, and again, that's going to have to be an administrator. In SharePoint, there's no bidirectional sync with Active Directory, so you need to make that decision. Are we going to allow users to upload the profile photos themselves in SharePoint, or are we going to do it on their behalf in either SharePoint or Active Directory?
Okay, great. So that's all the questions we have today. Thank you so much, Brittany. This was a lot of great information. Again, the recording of this session today will be on our website at sharepoint.protiviti.com/archived-webinars. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Brittany, and we will see you guys next time.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a great day.
Bye.